Buying a small car isn't just because a small SUV is cheap. It is a phenomenon of buying a small SUV to buy a small car. Hello, I'm Rascador. Now, I drove about 38 kilometers from Guangmyangxi to the Pajubuk complex rest area, and the fuel consumption was about 18 kilometers liter. So you can see that this vehicle has better high-speed fuel economy than expected. For the lowest fuel efficiency test, please refer to the fuel efficiency test video on the way home from Gangnam. In fact, the fuel efficiency test on the way home from work in Gangnam came out with the worst fuel economy by deliberately driving only on a blocked road, but the way back after the test was about 12 kilometers liter. So, it was found that even if it is blocked, the level of combined fuel economy comes out. On the other hand, highway fuel economy is currently showing 22 kilometers liter. In fact, the 1.6 gasoline turbo model is not a very fuel-efficient vehicle. It can be seen as a vehicle that has digested almost all powertrains owned by Hyundai Motor Company, except for the LPG powertrain. So 1.6 turbo, 1.6 diesel, 2.0 gasoline, electric, hybrid. This is a vehicle with 5 powertrains like this. First, let me tell you about the driving feeling of the second-generation Kona. Compared to the first-generation model, the driving feeling is really good. Compared to the first-generation model, the quietness is satisfactory. In particular, by applying road noise control, or double-glazed sound insulating glass, wind noise is greatly reduced. In the past, wind noise was heard everywhere even when the speed exceeded 100 km/h, but this vehicle is quiet even at 120 to 130 km per hour. The most surprising thing is that the engine used in the first-generation Kona N line was brought to the 1.6 gasoline turbo model, slightly improved. Of course, the part where this application is felt is that the certified fuel economy has increased by about 0.3 kilometers liter, and the overall driving experience has improved considerably. As a result, engine vibration and noise are greatly improved. In fact, the reason this vehicle does not show high results in the fuel efficiency test on the way home from work is because there is no engine, auto, stop, and go. So, in the case of congested roads, there is no function to turn off the engine when the car stops for a while in a place with many signals, so there is a significant difference in fuel economy. You can think that the auto stop and go function does not make a big difference in fuel economy on normal roads and shortens the life of the starter motor, but this function is of great help on congested roads. So even though this car doesn't have this function, if you play a song loudly, the vibration is so low that you think the engine is off. Maybe because this car is new. Of course there is some vibration when the engine is cold, or something like this. In general, small SUVs can be thought of as affordable vehicles, but they are no longer such vehicles. In the compact SUV market, it is reported that middle-aged people in their 50s and 60s are purchasing more than expected. So these people buy a lot of cars like Tivoli and Seltos. Before retirement, they used vehicles such as the Grandeur or G80, but after retirement, there are not many vacancies, so they seem to buy a lot of small SUVs that are easy to park and can be used comfortably. In fact, the small SUV market is fixed. Convenience that does not exceed the semi-mid-size. So, in fact, even if you want a small car and want to buy a small SUV, there are many cases where you are forced to buy a semi-medium size because of certain features. Also, if you're going to buy a semi-mid-sized car, Santa Fe or Sorento would be better, and there are many cases where you just buy a Palisade after continuing to go up step by step like this. This will make the vehicle too large, so if you are going to buy a Palisade, you better not just sell your existing vehicle. Those who use vehicles such as the Grandeur or Sonata were looking for a small SUV to purchase a small car, but as they continued to climb due to convenience specifications, there was a phenomenon in which Tucson, Santa Fe, and even Sorento were seen. So I think this vehicle is aimed at these people. The size of this car is slightly smaller than the Seltos and Trailblazer. Looking at the length of the battlefield, it is larger than the first generation model, but slightly smaller than the Seltos or Trailblazer. However, the long wheelbase is the strong point of this vehicle. Wheelbase refers to the space between the front and rear wheels. The shorter this length, the sportier the driving feel. Also, the wider this length, the more stable it is and the more space in the second row of the vehicle. So, compared to the first generation, the space in the second row of the vehicle has definitely increased. I thought the first generation model would have good legroom for kids to ride. On the other hand, after riding the second generation, the legroom is comparable to that of the Seltos, so it seems to be better than I thought. If possible, I would like to compare the Seltos and this car side by side with my own eyes. Vehicle prices have also risen significantly. First of all, the convenience specifications have increased a lot, but basically, the price of this car starts from the mid-20 million won range, and when the full option is applied based on the 1.6 gasoline turbo, the price is about 36 million won, and including the N-Line package, the price is about 37.4 million won. After paying other expenses here, the price is around 40 million won as a small SUV. As such, it is not a cheap unit price that can be surpassed by foreign cars. One of the reasons for this price was the CCNC applied to the Grandeur. The cockpit interface that goes into the current Genesis is CCNI. However, the model that takes this one step further is the CCNC. So, I entered Grandeur first and applied it to Kona like this. This is a really expensive option. But all electronic components get cheaper the more you make them. So, in order to make and use a lot of CCNC, it seems that they are trying to lower the manufacturing cost by putting it in the Grandeur, putting it in the Kona, and applying it to the upcoming Sonata and all Hyundai and Kia models. However, inevitably, the unit price is slightly higher. One of the things I think this vehicle has upped the ante on is the memory seats. You may think that the memory seat is not a big deal, but it is actually an option used for medium-sized or larger vehicles, but it was applied to this vehicle. In addition, high pass and built-in Cam 2, which were first introduced in Grandeur, were applied. Of course, the price will be added a little more with the built-in Cam 2 option, but you can see it as a vehicle made with all of that in mind. So it's a vehicle that doesn't regret the option part. Almost all of the Grandeur's essential options also apply to Kona. So, from a price point of view, it's a good price. Another reason for the high Kona price is probably because of the Venue. Previously, the Venue's price range was very vague. Venue was released before Casper came out, so if you bought it as a manual basic model, it would have been around 16.7 million won. Adding an IVT automatic transmission to this would add about 1.2 million won, so it could be purchased for about 17.8 million won. I bought a basic model with only a rear camera and high pass for about 18.6 million won. However, when Casper was released, the Casper Ven model started at 14 million won and cost 22 million won. Therefore, in the case of Casper, the average price range is said to be around 20 million won. Most of them are purchased in the second half of 20 million won because of options. Venue has a lot of people who prefer low options, so they buy it for around 20 million won, so the price range overlaps with Casper. And if you buy the Venue as a full option, it will be similar to the Kona mid-range option. As such, Venue is in an ambiguous price range between Casper and Kona. However, as the Kona's price range has risen, the Venue has been able to stabilize to some extent. The reason I say this is because this Kona option is based on the 1.6 gasoline turbo that entered the Kona N-Line, the basic first generation model. In the case of diesel models, it was deleted from the first generation of Kona in 2021. An A 2.0 gasoline engine, with a new engine, is being used to replace the diesel, and I wonder if this is meaningful. I've never seen a 2.0 naturally aspirated engine good for a small SUV. The previous Kona model was like that, and the SM3 also had a 2.0 gasoline model, but honestly, I didn't like it. So this vehicle is based on a 1.6 gasoline turbo, and discards the 1.6 naturally aspirated turbo. To be precise, rather than expressing that Kona gave up the naturally aspirated 1.6, there is a feeling of concession to the Venue. So, if this second generation model had a 1.6 naturally aspirated engine, I think it would have been cheaper by about 3 million won than now. Another reason for the increase in vehicle price is the bold abandonment of the 7-speed DCT that previously entered the 1.6 gasoline turbo N-line model, and the application of an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. Recently, an 8-speed automatic transmission is widely used in automobiles. You may think the basic unit price of the DCT is expensive, but in my opinion, the 8-speed automatic transmission is much more expensive. Fuel efficiency is good and there is no shift shock when shifting the DCT, and very fast as DCT. That's why I think a little bit that the 8-speed automatic transmission would be very expensive. That's why Kona's overall price has risen very high. In the case of Casper, there are still many people who prefer the 20 million won range, but a cost-effective option called the Essential came out. Even if the Essential model, which costs 16 million won, does not sell much, it plays a role in lowering the price of Casper to the 16 million won level. In the case of Venue, the price position was arranged from the 20 million won range to the mid-20 million won range, excluding the basic model, and the Kona price starting from the mid-20 million won range. For standard vehicles, the option price will not exceed 30% of the base model vehicle price. However, this vehicle is not. For example, if 30% is 25 million won, it should be 7 million won, and the full option price should be about 31 million won, but Kona goes up to 37 million won. Therefore, there is an option price difference of about 12 to 13 million won, and Kona is increasing the price difference by that much. In the case of Casper, the original price is the same, but on the surface, the compact car starts at 10 million won, through the option called the Essential, which has a good cost effectiveness of 16 million won. And the small SUV started from the 20 million won range, but it seems to have tried to show a stable appearance by placing the location of the Venue in the mid-20 million won range, and the Kona above it. In a way, I think Venue sacrificed a lot for this look. There will be vehicles in this ambiguous position in Hyundai Motors as well. What is an example? In fact, Sonata is also in an ambiguous position right now. So, this year's Sonata may become a full change model, but I wonder how the Sonata's price will come out compared to the Grandeur. I think the reason why the price range of the Grandeur has risen is probably because of the price of the next Sonata. If the price of the next Sonata rises, I think the Grandeur has become more expensive to minimize the price difference. Now we have arrived at the northernmost unification bridge, accessible by car from Korea. It took about 19 minutes to cover a distance of 27.7 kilometers, and fuel consumption was 19.7 kilometers liter. In this way, when the vehicle was driven for a distance of 20 kilometers, at a constant speed of 90 kilometers hour, fuel efficiency of 20 kilometers liter was obtained. When driving at 80 km per hour, fuel economy is expected to be around 21 to 22 kilometers L. Therefore, it would be nice to think that the highest fuel economy of the second generation Kona 1.6 gasoline turbo is about 20 kilometers liter. This test ends here. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. I would appreciate it if you click like and subscribe.